Hi, folks, and welcome back to the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, and we're going back to the newspaper strips today to talk about a pretty good story and one of my personal favorites, and I definitely think one that people might get a kick out of. It is called The Night Beast, and you can find it in Classic Star Wars Volume 2, The Rebel Storm. So the story of this story, I guess, is that it came out March 8th through May 16th of 1982. So this is one of the rare instances in the early Star Wars publishing days when the Sith are basically included. Now, of course, we know that Darth Vader, if you're reading, is a Dark Lord of the Sith, but that's about all we know. We don't know that Palpatine's a Sith, and we don't know that Palpatine is, his Sith name is Darth Sidious, at least at this point in 1982. We don't really know that yet. This is one of the early examples where the Sith are brought in. So, basically, our heroes here finally make it back to Yavin 4. And a TIE fighter is blasted down and crashes onto the surface of Yavin. And it basically awakens something underground that was in one of the Massassi temples. So this is actually the first story that introduces the Massassi into the Star Wars lore. There's been a lot of examples, later on, but, basically explaining that these are the guys who, and we'll get more elaboration on them later on, but they're kind of the guys, that planted the temples, right? That are all around Yavin 4. So it shows this beast character, this beast-looking creature that comes out at night. And so Luke is using the Force to try and find this thing. And he's not really consciously using the Force because, again, he's not really been trained. It's just kind of coming a little bit more naturally to him. And so the beast, spoilers, here is basically given a ship to return back to his people. That's kind of how the story ends. It's a very brief story here. So why do I go and I say that, the Night Beast, this is something you should check out? Well, here's the thing. We don't learn too much from here. But what's really cool, and we'll talk about this again when we get to it in our chronology, but later on in the 90s, Dark Horse Comics did this comic book series called Tales of the Jedi. This is one of the trades right here of the series. This is one of the best Star Wars comic books or series ever. It's one of my favorites. And again, I'll talk more about this when we get into the Tales of the Jedi publishing era. But anyways, in Tales of the Jedi and in the Jedi Academy trilogy by Kevin J. Anderson, we get a lot more elaboration on the Massassi and on this story, actually. So we learn in those that Naga Sadow, who is an ancient Sith Lord, he flees to Yavin, and his Sith, who are kind of these I think they're the Sith species still at this point, and they build these temples. And so they're kind of the first of the Massassi groups to build these temples. So Exar Kun then comes in. This is later. Exar Kun comes in, who's kind of the main Sith of the Tales of the Jedi series. He comes in, and basically he sets up these night beats as a defense mechanism for him, because he ends up getting his spirit trapped in the temple, which we see in the Jedi Academy trilogy. We see the spirit of Exar Kun coming out. And all that. And then you kind of see some of these night beasts that the young Jason Solo has to confront. So you're already, it's just so cool that Kevin J. Anderson, who wrote Tales of the Jedi and the Jedi Academy trilogy, it's so cool that, these things are big. This is big plot things, right? These are some major parts of the story. He finds a way to connect it way back into the newspaper strips that came out in 1982. Isn't that crazy? Again, another reason why I love the Star Wars Expanded Universe. I love the connections. I love the continuity. And yes, that was a retcon where they connected it later. But still, what an amazing retcon from two of my favorite stories in Star Wars. And again, I cannot wait to talk about these. But anyways, getting back to what we're talking about here. Is The Night Beast an essential read? Ultimately, I would say yes. It does introduce a lot of cool things that will connect to much, much bigger Star Wars stories, whether you're reading in chronological order whether you're reading in publication order or whether you're just reading in whatever order or whatever book or comic or whatever that you just choose to pick up. It is worth your time because it is going to establish and build up more of these big plot points that you'll find in these stories. So I highly encourage you to check out The Night Bees. It's not a bad story, it's a fun, and you would just think back in the day it was just a self-contained story, but knowing what we know now in 2020, at the time of this recording, I think it's definitely an essential read, and I think you should definitely check it out. So folks, that is all the time I have to say for now, and I will see you next time with another episode of the Star Wars Library.